We have Alan in Michigan. If God isn't physical, can science even address the question of God? Is that right, Alan?
Yes, sir, Matt. That is. Thank you.
So science addresses that which is. It doesn't require that something necessarily be physical.
Okay.
But let's assume for a second that you're right, that we're limited in what we can explore to the physical world in one way or another.
Right. I'm just suggesting.
Yeah. Well, let's assume that that's the case, that science cannot explore the non-physical. That's not science's fault. And so now you're in a situation where evidently...
I mean, it's not science's fault. It just seems like the wrong tool.
Right, but the thing is...
the question of God.
Well, that's the thing. What tool do you use? And when you're deciding on the tool, don't you have to know something about what it is that you're looking for?
Yeah.
So what tool should we use instead of science? What tool, what methodology allows us to reasonably conclude facts about things that aren't physical?
Well, yeah. Well, okay. I mean, that's the root of the question. I mean, so it's not physical. So we just need some other method if we're going to address it. I guess I'm on to say it's a philosophical problem, and yes, we can never have absolute certainty with that. I mean, I understand the atheist position. I'm teetering there myself. I mean, we don't have sufficient evidence to claim X, so why should we claim X?
Okay, so let me clarify a couple things real quick. Let me clarify a couple things real quick. There is no atheist position. People are atheists. Some of them are atheists for really bad reasons. I don't think you can be absolutely certain about anything, and definitely science is not about absolute certainty. Neither science nor knowledge is about absolute certainty. It's about reasonable confidence that's consistent with the evidence. And so to whatever extent you were describing atheism, I think you were describing skepticism, which is I'm not going to believe something until I have good reason to do it.
Okay.
So let's say, now there are plenty of things that aren't physical, like thoughts, abstractions.
Yes.
I mean, math isn't physical, and yet we can still reason about it. But math isn't something that exists like extant as a physical thing within the universe.
So, I'll just concede the bad wording.
Yeah, but well, I'm not worried about that so much as, for most part, take every God that someone has proposed. Is that God detectable as a manifestation in reality in principle? In other words, for every God that people have bbeen proposing, well, all right, let's just pick a God. We'll go with the God of classical theism that exists within Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Islam, etc. That being, can it be detected? Does it manifest in reality in some detectable way? And if the answer is no, then we're kind of stuck, right? Because if something doesn't detect, it doesn't manifest in a way that we can detect, we can't say anything about it. We can't say whether it exists. We can't talk about its features, nothing. And yet we live in a world where people are constantly talking about the features and qualities of these gods. And so that God must manifest in a detectable way. Otherwise, these people are claiming to have detected the undetectable. And that would make them incredibly irrational.
Right.
So we must be talking about a God that's detectable. So let me ask, I'm not asking you, obviously, but the question to them is, how did they detect a God?
Right. Okay, so when I have discussions about the origins of religion, and people say, and I was going to actually save this question for another call that seems a segue in. People say, well, religion was created to control people. But, you can look at one, maybe you look at one religion and say, well, yes, it seems that religion was created to do that. And you can certainly point to passage in the Bible that says, yes, about obey your masters or what. But the early histories, I mean, the early history of Buddhism, the early history of Christianity, it doesn't seem to bear that out. Now, it doesn't mean that Christianity didn't become a tool for that by the 4th century. I mean,
so the thing is, I don't buy into this notion that religions were created to control people. I think religions are the stories that we've told ourselves to keep from having to admit that we don't know, or to assuage our fears or whatever else. But the religions that survive the best are the ones that spread because they are also good at controlling people, because they give just enough detail to keep it fuzzy and meaningful to people, but not so much detail that you can debunk them. Basically, they're going to make unfalsifiable claims. I don't know where Genevieve is on this, but I want to get her in here.
Yeah, I mean, I would just put hi, Alan. I would just put a different spin on the idea that religion was created to control people, because I know, every time we say that, we're talking about a very, very negative, oppressive structure. I would almost say that, yes, religion was created to control people, but not necessarily in the way that you're thinking. I mean, in the last, what is it? Humans have been around for 250, 300,000 years, and it was only really in the last 70,000 years that we went through this massive cognitive revolution where we started, somehow in the last 70,000 years, we've just started creating these different societies and structures and eventually civilizations. And we have this whole new way of life that is very different than, the humans that existed prior to 70,000 years ago. I think that religion was created to control people, in the sense that religion gives us a shared mythology and a shared narrative that prevents us from othering each other and instead unites people as a society. And I think that was really the benefit of early religion. It was storytelling. It was just stories that you would tell one another and sort of explain, because like I said in the beginning, we're bored and we want answers. But I think that the proliferation of religion beyond that does have to do with just maintaining social structures. We kind of need those as humans. We're very social creatures, and religion was very beneficial for that. Doesn't mean any of it is true, of course not. But that's my idea.
I mean, when I'm talking to someone about Genesis, it's like, no, it's just a record of how they saw the world. Just don't get your panties all in a twist because it was 7,000 years ago. I mean, just stop. That's not what the Bible is. That's not what the Old Testament is.
I was going to reach over and put on one of my Christian hats for a second because I like doing that. But I can tell you that when I was a Southern Baptist, my response to that would be, it wasn't 7,000 years ago. I have a real relationship with the risen God of the universe, who's the creator and governor and keeper of the universe, and blah, 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 blah. And so if you tell somebody to forget about it because it's 7,000 years ago, no Christian or Jew is sitting around pining about Adam and Eve. And they're not all going to take it literally. And so this is something that means something to people. That's undeniable. The question is, how do we go about figuring out whether or not it's true? And this is the thing that you began by talking about. It's like, hey, if God isn't physical, how could we investigate it? What could science say? Well, I think there are plenty of tools that we have to investigate and explore things, whether they are physical or even in the sense of abstractions, because we have mathematics, which is probably one of the most rigid disciplines.
Yes.
Far more rigid than what we understand about biology, for sure. 2 plus 2 is 4, ever it was in base 10 or whatever. It's not the fault of science that if there is a God, it's undetectable. That is the fault of that God, and more so because let's imagine that there were non-physical spirits, and plenty of people think they are. I haven't seen any good evidence for them. I don't know how we demonstrate it scientifically, but if they can manifest in a detectable way, if EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, if that was a real thing, it's not, it's bullshit. But if it were a real thing, that might be a way to detect it. That might be, we get the manifestation. To date, we haven't been able to confirm any of that, but at least we can look. And what we're always looking for is that manifestation. It's worse if, in fact, they're trying to claim that there's a God, because they're claiming there's a God that can be undetectable if it wants to be. can be detectable as a matter of convenience for the people who are supposedly detecting it, created everything and created a world where reason and evidence and logic win the day. And that's how we go about figuring out the answers to the most important questions that we're going to come across.
Mhm.
And then in the case of like Christianity, is then going to judge people based on their understanding of something that God failed to provide evidence in a reasonable way of finding it out. It's like you might as well be playing a massive game of guess what number God is thinking of, and if you get it right, you get to go to heaven, and if you get it wrong, you go to hell.
Well, yes.
Uh,
I mean, I agree with you. I'm not a Christian. I haven't been a Christian since.
Yeah, no. I
don't
just
even remember
have to
being a
teach
Christian,
to
even
more
though
than
I
you.
grew up in a church. Hmm?
Yeah. No, I
What's
didn't
that?
suspect that. I just have to teach to more than you. So I want to make sure that I'm clear with you, but also there's thousands of people out there watching
Yes,
this,
I
and I don't want
understand.
them to be confused. On that note, I think we're going to move
Okay.
on to some other callers, Alan. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Oh, I just one more quick question.
Sure.
When were you in the Navy?
From 1987 to 1995,
Okay, way after me.
96,
Anyway,
something like that.
okay.
Sure.
73 to 81. I just wanted to ask.
Yeah. I went in, I graduated high school in 87, went in right after it and did about 8.5 years.